Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the large and unnecessary First Player Token podcast. We've determined in previous episodes that it's required to say podcast at the end of it.
Oh, it definitely is.
I think we've had a discussion on this.
Aye.
Can't really remember where we landed on it, but I feel compelled to say podcast anyway. And episode 10. Who'd have thought it?
10 episodes, Euan.
Really?
Kind of 11 episodes, but this is officially episode 10.
We're talking official episodes.
Aye. We're not really counting episode 0, are we?
No, don't talk about it.
We don't talk about episode 0. It is still available.
Still available if you just keep scrolling down past 1. It's a bizarre code.
We're going to delete it from everything soon. So if you've downloaded episode 0, it'll be worth a lot of money at some point. Yeah, a lot of money.
Well, we'll put just episode 0 up behind a paywall.
I think that's a good idea. 50 quid to listen.
Then it'll
to
be
the
one
episode.
of these things that people will be talking about. So I've heard episode 0. I've heard episode 0. I might have to get this.
Yeah, here, mate, you got any episode 0? Stop dodgy guys in cars.
That's what they're calling it these
Ford
days.
Escorts for the 1980s. Right, how you doing, Euan?
Not bad.
Good.
It's good to see we made it to 10 episodes within a year. It's a nice number to finish off with for the year.
Yeah, it is, because this is going to be the last episode of 2015.
It is.
Or 2015, as it's sometimes known.
We'll be back with you sometime in January.
Yep.
Some
Some unspecified time
The
in
festive
January.
period is not a time for recording, distributing, or listening to podcasts.
Well, not with the plans that we've made, because we're basically not going to see each
We're
other for a
not
while.
going to be about, basically. And we'll be wanting to spend the times we are together getting pissed, Chris.
That's true, aye. Very, very pissed, I hope.
That's the plan for myself, anyway. Even if I have to do it on my own.
Well, you might do on Christmas Day, because I'm not going to fucking
That's fine.
Right.
Finish off that Metaxa.
Euan's favourite Greek drink, Metaxa.
Golden nectar.
Okay, well, we'll be honest straight up front. We've not really done much board gaming, have we?
This is going to be a pretty loosey-goosey episode.
It is. We've been way too busy for that
Which
kind of
ties
thing.
in with Christmas, I guess, is a loosey-goosey kind of time.
It is.
And if you eat a goose for Christmas, then you're even more tied in. And you're doing us all a favour by ridding the world of geese.
You not like geese?
Not a fan. I'm not a fan of geese.
Well, let's just take the attitude that me and Euan have had over the past couple of weeks and just relax, people, alright? We've just been relaxing.
Yeah, just chill out.
And also stressing out about Christmas coming up, but relaxing.
There's that as well, yeah. So just get a cup of tea.
Aye.
We've got cups of tea.
I've got a cup of tea here.
I'm just going to...
Simultaneous, I like that.
Oh, I think that should be a new feature of the podcast, just a simultaneous tea sip at some point during the podcast.
Right.
To kind of punctuate something.
Let's keep that going.
Right.
So, you been playing much video games, Euan?
I have a wee bit. As usual, I've been continuing on with Metal Gear Solid. Not again.
Have you?
I have played a little bit of it. I've basically just been pissing about though. Like I've not.
You
done
got to that stage.
I've not done anything that's resulted in you receiving a reward on your
Facebook notification.
Yeah, everybody telling
some bloody what do you call them?
A trophy.
A trophy. That's the one.
All the world knowing about your Metal Gear Solid trophies.
That aren't mine.
And I picked up a wee game on Steam the other day, which I've been playing. Yeah, Railroad by Sid Meier.
Yeah, you did.
Which I think everybody's a fan of his. Really, we've talked a little bit about the board game based on his video game, which was based on somebody else's board game.
Yes,
and it's in his general style of just simulating things on a generally like a large geographical scale.
Yeah.
This time trains going from one place to another.
He likes that kind of thing.
Yeah, he really does. I'm not sure, I've not seen a picture of him, but I'm really hoping he is not the guy in the opening intro.
I think he might be.
Which I was like, well, it's a CGI, sort of cartoonish representation
That's
of him.
definitely him. No, that's him in real life.
Oh, that's what he looks
Yeah,
like.
that's
He just
what
wanders
he looks
away
like a CGI
Because to
man.
be honest, there was a bit at the start of that when he wanders into this dark room with sort of just his lustful dreams of setting up a train set. I mean, at any point in the first sort of 30 seconds of that cutscene, it wouldn't have seemed out of place if there'd been a boy in the corner, like tied and gagged to a chair. the dimness of it to begin with. I mean, it moves on. It moves on, but so the game anyway.
Whoa.
Right, I advise you all to go out and check out the opening intro to
The Railroad.
To Railroad! Exclamation mark by Sid Meier.
Do you want to talk about that now, or will I talk about something first, or what?
You had something to talk about?
I've got two things to talk about. I thought it'd be nice if we could have me and then you and then me.
Alright, fine then.
It's a Hanratty sandwich, I think we call it.
Well, commence the Hanratty sandwich then.
Right.
Slap that first bit of bread on me.
Okay. Well, I've been playing a couple of things, other than... to be honest, I've actually been playing a hell of a lot of 7 Days to Die again. They came up with a massive update for that, which is full of bugs, which is really annoying.
And that's the nature of 7 Days to Die, isn't it?
Yeah, it basically makes multiplayer mode unplayable because
Right.
I'm running the server. It makes the person running the server basically can't play the game because the frame rate drops to about 5 whenever you go anywhere near a zombie. So that's I don't know what it is. And I'm getting an impression from the news that the Fun Pimps have put up. Those are the developers of the game. That they don't actually know what's causing that either. So
that's quite scary.
Aye, so
they've just been patching this game. It's in there somewhere. There's something
sudden,
that's reacting.
They're managing to fix all the other little things that's wrong with it, but they've basically, from what they said, I can't remember the exact statement they made, but it sounded like they just don't have a clue what's going on with that there. So that should be fun for them to find. So other than that, I've been playing two things. I've been playing Dragonfin Soup, and Armello, which are the two things I mentioned in episode 9 that I said that I was going to talk about. So which one do you want to hear about first, Euan?
Well, you showed me a bit of Armello, and I've considered playing some, but I've just not really built up the stones to buy it, because I'm worried that it might be one of those games that I might end up just putting down again as soon as I've started playing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird one. I think it's not a game that I'll sit and play continuously for hours on end, sort of thing. I'll play one game of it, and then I'm happy. I'm happy for a week. But it's quite a fun wee game, and it hits a sort of sweet spot for which I said the last time for us, because it's a board game that you play on your computer. Yeah, but it's a really beautifully animated and it's really nice looking sort of board game.
I can't fault that. It does look amazing.
Yeah, it's very pretty, and it's very cartoony as well. So like you've each player's playing a character. You can play it against the computer, or you can play it multiplayer as well, and you can make random matchups with people as well, so you don't have to have friends that play it. Now each player gets to pick a character, and there's sort of like a few different clans in the game that they belong to, and you get different bonuses depending on who you are. So you've got like a wolf clan and a bear clan and a rabbit clan, and I think it's a rat clan possibly. And they are just cartoon wolves and bears and stuff like that. Yeah. And you get different bonuses. Like each character's got its own bonus, but each clan gets its own bonus, and they tend to be like you get day and night clans. So like the turns in the game are day turns and night turns, and then during the day clans get a bonus, and during the night clans get a bonus, and that kind of thing. Now, all you're doing in this game is it's sort of played on it's almost like, it reminds me like Settlers of Catan, this style of board. It's that sort of hexagon tiles, but on a hexagon shaped board.
Oh, right. That's one thing I didn't see, the sort of extent of the world and the board, as it were.
And so I think it's a hexagon shape. It could be a sort of diamond shape. I can't remember. Right. No, I think it's a diamond shape, actually.
It conforms to Euclidean...
yes, geometry, yeah, it does. Okay. Right. The different spaces on the board, they're all different terrain types. So you've got like just plains, and you've got swamps, and you've got caves, or dungeons as they are, and mountains, and in the very centre of the board there's the castle. And in the castle there's a king. Yeah. And the king is this big sort of lion guy, and the king is apparently very, very ill. He's coming down with this rot thing.
He looks pretty ill. And
as the game goes on, he gets more and more ill. So there's like 10 day turns and 10 night turns before he basically dies. Right. And there's a number of different ways of winning this game. So if the king dies at the end of the game, whoever's got the most prestige points would win at that point. But you can also win the game by just killing the king, which is a very hard thing to do because the king is nails. Right. So you have to really build up to be able to do that. And there are a couple other things that you can do as well to win the game. But Basically, when it's your turn, you've got 3 action points. You might get more depending on sort of skills and equipment that you've got, and you can just like move a space on the board, or it costs you 2 to move into a mountain. And you get quests. So you might be going hunting down quests, and each of your characters have got stats, and each quest is one of the stats associated with it, sort of thing. So if you've got a high body skill, you might want to go after a body quest, and then there's a random chance of you getting good equipment and stuff like that if you get to that space that the quest is on and complete the quest, basically. And it's just like, it just comes down to rolling dice. So they've got these like funky little dice, which are kind of similar to dice in a game, the board game we're going to talk about, and they've got like just different symbols on the sides of them. So if you go and do a quest and you have to match up certain symbols or something like that, then you just roll a certain number of dice depending on your stats and that kind of thing, and then try and get these symbols up.
Yeah.
And when it's the same when you're fighting people, so you can go into combat against people as well. So other characters, and you get a number of dice depending on your fight skill, but you can also get bonus things depending on your equipment, which you can pick up as the game goes on.
Yeah.
So you get these cards, which are just equipment cards or spell cards or trickery cards, 3 different things, and they've got different symbols and stuff on them.
Yeah.
Or some of them will say, like, if you equip this, you get two extra dice in combat or something like that. Like, weapons, like a battle axe or something like that. You get shields.
Sounds very board gamey.
It's very board gamey.
In the way that it's like the mechanics of it working.
Aye.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems like there's a lot going on in it, sort of thing, but there's not really. Once you actually start playing the game, once you get the hang of the fact that like you're just getting a hand of cards, you draw up to your hand limit every turn, and you can equip cards depending on, some of them cost gold, some of them might cost magic to play spells on certain parts of the board and stuff like that. Because one of the things you can do is you can cast a spell on a certain square on a board, and it sets a trap basically for other people to walk into. But I think what's really the good thing about the game is just how it looks. I think the sort of feel and the atmosphere in the game is like you can kind of just lose yourself in this board game,
right? That
is really a video game. It's kind of weird. Like,
it's from what you're describing it to me. I'm trying to fit it in something, and it does kind of remind me of Mage Knight.
Yeah, kind of, but
questing,
nowhere near as complicated as Mage Knight.
Aye. But I like a lot of board games. Probably seems more complicated to begin with than it actually is.
Yeah. I mean, in Mage Knight there's a hell of a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I mean, maybe it is nearly as complicated as Mage Knight. I don't know. It's just the fact that because you're playing it as a video game, everything's done for you.
Aye.
So
I think that's part of a lot. I've looked at quite a few board games that we played and wondered, like, if this was just set up.
Aye, if a computer was doing all this for us,
and everything like that,
you would cut the time in half.
Yeah.
Aye. But I think the thing about board gaming is that it's actually having the physical bits in front of you that makes a lot of difference, and it's a social activity.
It's a society.
A society. Right, I've lost my thread here.
Sorry, talking pish.
I mean, I'm not really doing the game any justice here, I'll be honest with you, because I'm just kind of trying to describe how the game works here and stuff like that and what's going on. You really need to have a look at this game and actually like have a quick play of it. I mean, I backed it on Kickstarter quite early on.
Oh, yeah, I
didn't
know
it was a Kickstarter thing, okay. Yeah. But it is available now on Steam.
Did they release it on Steam at the same time they released the Kickstarter?
No, I think the Kickstarter backers did get their
exclusive.
But there was alpha and beta versions that the Kickstarter backers could join in on, and I did a bit of the beta gaming. It did have some bugs and stuff, but it was playable.
Yeah.
It's much nicer now. It's much smoother. Everything looks better. The game plays a lot easier and stuff now. Now that it's full release, and it only came into full release not long ago. It was just a month or two ago that it got its full release. It's very, like I say, it's very cartoony, very quirky. One of the nice things about it is the cards that you get that have got your equipment on them, they're all animated.
I did see that. That's quite
they sit in your hand, they're sitting at the side of the screen, you can just see things moving on your cards and stuff, and it's quite cool that. It's a nice wee touch that they've got. The artwork is gorgeous on all these things. It's really well done. And if you're playing as certain clans, if you win games as certain clans, or just play a game as a certain clan or something, you can unlock new things, which give you bonuses you can pick at the start of each game, like rings and stuff like that. So you can wear rings that give you some bonus, or you can pick extra stats and stuff like that. So there's unlockables in the game, is basically what I'm trying to say. that keep you sort of coming back and wanting to play it some
Oh,
more.
right, cool.
But
But you're basically every time you're playing through the same scenario.
it's the
Well,
same
it's
thing,
randomised.
yeah. It's the same setup
thing,
every
but
time you
there's
play the
always going
game.
to be the same
Yeah,
basic scenario to it.
and I always feel really sorry for that king because
It's a shame.
you get to the start of every, I think it's night turn, and he starts sort of like holding his head in his hands and looking like he might be crying and stuff like that.
Oh,
And it's just
God.
like, this is a lion man that's losing his life and he
Yeah,
knows. And I've just spilt tea on
Just
myself in my excitement.
Oh well, we're doing a lot of visual work for a podcast today. So who's making Armello? Who made it?
You know what? I can't remember.
Can't remember.
But I'm gonna look that up.
Well, the thing while you're doing it, the thing that interests me about it is the idea that it's did they set out to make essentially a board game style, or was it just that was the way that they wanted to do their video
from
game?
the beginning, it was always going to be a board game.
Yeah.
The video game board game thing. That was, and to be honest, it really hasn't changed that much since the beta alphas came out. Whatever. It was developed and published by League of Geeks.
League of Geeks.
Yes. It is available on Windows, Linux, iOS, Android. It's coming out on PlayStation 4.
Okay.
And OS X as well.
Right. So basically, all your
I didn't actually know it was out on Android and iOS.
when did that happen?
Interesting.
Well, you learn something every time you research it in the middle of a podcast.
That's it.
don't you?
I do. We should do more research in the middle of the podcast because I learn more and more about these games.
Well, it'd be
as we
interesting to know certainly some of the people involved in it and how involved they are maybe with board game design as well. If they've maybe had a hand in some of the games that we played, maybe even
It's a
written
good
some-
shout. It's a good shout.
Well,
But that's probably too much research to be doing right at this
right
very
at this
second.
minute, yeah, I would expect so. Well, give them a ring when you get a minute.
Yeah.
Give them a bell.
Like, I told the listeners, we're relaxing. We're relaxing.
Sorry, yeah.
That's what we're doing.
I didn't mean to
We're
bring this
relaxing.
into the realms
is
of
Christmas, man.
professionalism.
This is our not Christmas episode, so
Aye.
we're relaxing.
Yeah, we're just chilling.
Just chill it, all right?
Jingle
Stop
bells.
demanding things of me. Right, and now Armello, yeah. I would give it good solid 5 thumbs up if I had 5 thumbs.
Right. Maybe it's one of these animals does the 5-thumbed
If I had 6 thumbs, I would give it 5 thumbs up. I
Right,
think.
okay.
Right, yeah.
So if you had 5, you'd give it 4. Or you'd
Nah,
still give
but
it 5 because...
I would give it 4 and a bit. I mean,
Right, okay. Well, your proper ratio then.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
right, I see what you mean.
if I had
5
thumbs,
5 to 6 is the nearest whole number to make it.
if I had 5 thumbs and one of them was only a bit of a thumb, then I would hold all 5 of my thumbs up. Okay.
I think that's... Well, that's thrown me slightly, but I'll go with you anyway. I think I get the gist.
Right. Now I'm going to let you talk about railroads. All right. I was desperate to speak there. I think.
I'd been going on too
But
long.
now you're the filling in the Hanratty sandwich, so
Excellent.
carry on.
It's a kind of a weak filling, but it's one. That... So yeah, I've been
You
playing.
transport sauce in this game.
You can transport oil,
Oil.
and you can refine that into manufactured goods.
All right. Well, give me a manufactured goods sandwich, Euan.
Yes. Don't break your teeth on the plastic. So, yeah, I've been playing Railroad. You've got to say the exclamation mark. And it's a very simple wee game. I mean, there's been many a railroad simulator with a Railroad Tycoon.
Oh, yeah.
There's been
Transport
board
Tycoon,
games, yeah. I don't know how this one differs from any of those because I've not played any of those other ones, but I've enjoyed Railroad. I mean, who doesn't enjoy watching trains just dawdle about the southwest?
Is
in
it
a little
railroad
sort of
or is it
render?
railroads? It's
It's-
railroads.
All right,
Yeah,
sorry,
it's
I thought it was Railroad. Railroad.
Sorry, carry on.
Exclamation mark there,
Yeah,
throwing me off.
Sid Meier's railroads exclamation mark.
Okay. Oh yeah, you. I mean, and it's set in the heyday of the Great American expansion into the West and
Yes.
the sort of the oil rush and gold rush it kind of covered. So it's, I mean, you generally start in sort of like 1850 and play through to like, I don't know, maybe like the 1950s or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a few scenarios. So far I've stuck to the Southwest and I've just played it with different sort of settings. So I started off just playing it on my own just to kind of get to grips with sort of how you lay out the tracks and everything like that. Because you basically you lay tracks between different cities, and there's also areas that produce, well, there's industry areas, so that produce meat or corn or oil or gold ore, things like that.
Yep.
So you need to get goods from those to cities where they can be processed into whatever they're getting made into. And then you also have to transport passengers and mail and things like that. And it's a good idea to try and keep your sort of mail coaches and your passenger and mail trains and your freight trains separate, because obviously people don't like being chucked about like with the cattle.
Chucked about like cattle, with cattle.
With cattle. And it can also affect the speed of the trains. So you want a quicker train, you can send like a few smaller trains with a couple of carriages of passengers between cities.
Yeah.
And I did have a lot of trouble with one particular city that I just seemed to find myself suddenly like using quite a lot for processing materials, and it grew quite quickly, and there was a lot of passengers wanting away from that as well, so I was having to send quite a lot of trains to this city. And there was a lot of trains. Every so often I'd go back and just see about 5 trains sitting outside the city waiting to get in, costing me money and maintenance costs and everything like that. So there's, I quite like working towards efficiency in these games. It's something I enjoy in board games, and it's quite fun to do in this. And you have sort of certain you'll have objectives for different scenarios. So the main ones for the Southwest are sort of getting the first sort of shipments of gold, and also building a route between Phoenix. I'm trying to remember if it is Phoenix and Las Vegas via somewhere else. Well, it doesn't need to be. I think basically need to connect these 3 cities.
Anchorage.
Well, I don't know if it's Anchorage. I don't know if the map stretches that far. That's going to annoy me now. I can't remember that. But all throughout, there's some lovely sort of Americana, lovely bit of music playing.
Yeah,
bit of bluegrass. But you can. It is quite like piercing.
It is.
The way it's recorded is very tinny, and it becomes one of the most striking things in the game. But yeah, not really a lot to. It's a railroad simulator, Chris.
Well, I was going to ask you actually, right? I have played Railroads, but I remember spending a lot of time when I was younger, in particular, playing Transport Tycoon 2.
Ah, right.
And there was a few things you could do in Transport Tycoon 2 to annoy people.
Right.
And a lot of that involved like waiting to see where they were starting to build a railway track, and then just building loads of railway track around it, just to stop them from going wherever they were going, like forcing them to build bridges and stuff like that. Can you do that in this?
I think it's more sort of based around sort of like carving out an area. So it's I've done the couple of missions where or gone through the scenario with I think 3 AI players, and we haven't really gotten that close to each other yet. In fact, right. The AI players, I've put them on a reasonable setting, they seem to just piss about for the most part. They've certainly not tried to troll me, and I haven't had the resources to start running rings around them. So I'll tell you as soon as
you need to get some cheat codes.
As soon as I know. I'm not hacking the game, Chris.
It's worth it for trolling the AI.
It's an almost 10-year-old simulator. I will not feel like a human being if I go into a hacked version of that.
Well, I'm reading here, for some reason, the game came out in October 2006 on Windows, but only came out on OS X in 2012. I don't understand that one, but
I'm not entirely sure why that is.
Maybe it was an updated version, I have no idea.
Yeah, well, obviously, again, this has come through Steam, so and you can pick it up for the bargain price of, I think it's £1.40 something I paid for it. As I slowly work towards that,
that's pretty good.
As I slowly work towards that £5 threshold you have to hit for
to become an actual
Steam
on
user.
Steam.
I don't have access to my profile at the moment. This is how bad it is.
Yeah, I can't add you as a friend.
I know,
can I?
It's ridiculous.
No.
Well, the thing is, that the profile that you may be linked to may well be my profile, and I just can't.
You can't remember
do
the
anything.
password.
No, I just can't do anything to it. I might well be logged into something, and there's just a paywall between me and being able to socialise with people and play games as a human being. So yeah, I'll be looking up a few more £1.50 purchases on Steam to get up to that £5 threshold.
Why did you not just buy a game for a £5?
That would be too easy, Chris.
In fact, actually, if you buy a game for a £5 on Steam, that probably suggests that it's shit. I mean,
Well,
if you buy a game for £1.49, that suggests it's old, but still probably good.
Aye. Yeah, I think you've got more experience with Steam than I do, but from what I've heard, there is a lot of just utter gash on Steam, and a lot of it's like early access stuff, new games and things like that. So,
well, I've downloaded quite a few things on Steam these days. I've got more than 100 games now on Steam, and what annoys me the most now about what Steam does is when I log in, it says games similar to what you play. And gives me a sort of slideshow of all these games, and they all look fucking terrible. Aye. And it's because I own stuff like 7 Days to Die, which is, I know, a crafting survival game and stuff like that. There's a hell of a lot of survival games out there that are terrible. Like, absolutely terrible looking things.
There's also a lot of, like, free-to-play anime mamorpagas.
Oh yeah, stay the hell away from that shit.
It's filled with them.
Stay away from
if it's not got a wide release, it's not going to be worth your time.
They're going to ask you for money at some point.
Aye, well, of course.
That's what free to play means.
Aye.
Free to play until we ask you for money.
I'm aware that I've played a few on the mobile just out of sheer boredom, and most of them have been pretty terrible. There's been a couple where I've been like, they've applied a business model here where basically most people can play it for free and just play against each other, and then the few idiots that like to pay money for it will basically end up in a league of their own where you don't have to deal with them. Basically, it's quite good. Well,
I'm reading something here about railroads.
More about railroads.
Yeah, and one of the things here it says is that the industries vary depending on where you're playing your scenario. And this pretty much sums up the difference between Europe and America, because it says that the European scenarios focus on wine, beer and dairy products, while the American scenarios focus on oil and gold.
Aye, oil and gold. Well, that said, I mean, the Southwest, around California, they're pretty keen on there's a lot of wineries around there in the scenario I've played. The AI game I've started, that's why I kind of want to get a bit more into that game against the three AI players, because I feel like I've started in a really good spot. They've basically plonked me in Yuma, which again is just cool because of the association. But you basically you've got a vineyard on one side of you and a big sort of gold mine on the other. So you just start off just beast, and Yuma processes both of those things through wine and gold bars.
Well, you're sorry.
So it's not a bad place to be starting. So I've got a couple of nice wee trains going along there.
You've got to be careful though, Euan, because if you just focus solely on that part, this is what gets me in these railroad tycoon style games, is that if you just get this little system going, you go, oh, that's nice, and you just let it go for ages, and all of a sudden the rest of the world is covered in railroads with the other players. Isn't that what life is like? Really, is. It is. You
stop to admire a piece of beautiful symmetry or just a process working perfectly, and everybody just tramples by and just.
That's it.
But
suddenly you're not as happy as you thought you were.
Should we just stop now, Chris?
Sorry, man.
All right.
So, do you want to rate railroads? Using broken thumbs again, or something like that.
Well, I'll give it 5 railroad spikes in a lung.
In a lung?
Yeah. Because there's all those stories about, old cowboys getting railroad spikes through their chest and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
and then still being alive.
Old classics.
Yeah. Being able to walk into a bar and order a whiskey.
And then collapsing once he's drunk it.
Aye, yeah.
That kind of
thing. The poetic kind of way.
Riding off on a horse, slumped over.
But, like you, that cowboy could probably fit a 6th railroad spike into that chest of his.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure what that is, but there's something. It's probably the lingering sense of dread that the intro cinematic causes in me.
All you're thinking about is that boy strapped to a chair.
He's just out of shot. I feel like you could rescue him. You're just.
That's the final scenario in the game, Euan. You've got to get a train to smash through the walls of this office,
and then you've got to get the
rescue
train
the boy
back with him on it.
No, you've got to make a decision. Actually, you can rescue him or you can not rescue him.
Right.
You can become the man.
But then it turns out to be a Bioshock game.
Yeah.
And then later on, that moral choice has absolutely fuck all impact on the game.
I'd heard that Bioshock was basically a spiritual successor to the Railroad series. So.
I think it is, actually. There's definitely elements that carry over. It's steampunk, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
It's the ultimate steampunk. Trains are where it all got started.
That's it.
Isambard Kingdom Brunel were the first steampunk. He didn't invent the trains, but he was a steampunk-looking guy.
Okay, well, speaking of steampunk, let's move on to something that isn't very steampunk.
All right.
How's that for a segue?
Okay. Now, I believe it's a segue.
Right, well, I've been playing Dragonfin Soup. Which...
But Chris, that's fantasy.
What? Dragonfin Soup?
Yeah.
It is fantasy, that.
All right.
I mean, I've never seen Dragonfin Soup. I've thought about it.
Oh, well.
So I suppose it is technically fantasy.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so Dragonfin Soup, it's a game which I backed on Kickstarter again a couple of years ago. Possibly longer than that, actually. Yeah. And I was quite excited about it because it ticked a few boxes for me.
Right.
It was a roguelike game. I do like a roguelike game. Now, do you know what a roguelikes are?
I've heard. I know the term, and I could probably fit a few games in that category. But yes. I'm not so familiar with it that I wouldn't make a few mistakes.
Right. Well, I think that's when roguelikes become this term now, this sort of umbrella term for a number of different just styles of games. But you've got to think about
Legacy a roguelike?
Yes.
Right.
But the original Rogue game was played using ASCII characters on a sort of very... Well, I can't even remember, like probably the early 90s, late 80s possibly.
Yeah.
I might even be earlier than that, I don't know. Which used a sort of procedurally generated dungeon. So some guy just sat and designed this thing.
Yeah.
And it just used ASCII characters on your screen, because that was what the technology was at the time. Alright?
All it could display.
And it was like, a yellow at symbol was a dog or something like that, and
right.
The red exclamation mark might have been an ogre or something, and it was that kind of thing, and you just kind of wandered about a dungeon. You just kept playing through this game until you died.
Right.
Alright, and as you went through, you just basically wanted to see how long you could last. And that's what roguelikes really are. They're just basically like never-ending, sort of just randomly generated games that
you just
sit and play.
For you to play.
Aye, because it's just mind, it's popcorn for the brain sort of thing. It's just like you just eat it. You don't even particularly enjoy it. You just eat it.
Yeah, you're sitting there stuffing your face.
Exactly.
Like, what is
just
this?
like, this is just, it doesn't taste of anything. What am I doing? Right. Now that's roguelike game summed up. Mm-hmm. All right. Now this is a roguelike game. Now I have played a few roguelike games. Like Rogue Legacy was excellent. But that was a platformer roguelike.
Yeah.
So like in the past, you wouldn't have called that a roguelike game because platformer games were not roguelike games. But this,
but it kind of got the concept of playing until you died, basically.
Yeah, and it was basically you just played
expanded on that, I guess.
Yeah. So this is a roguelike, and it's going back to that sort of more classic roguelike style thing, where you're basically it's randomly generated, and it's sort of top down,
right?
And it's kind of like sort of SNES graphics, I suppose. A bit more advanced than that, but I think that's the style that we're going for. So if you think sort of like Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past,
right,
that sort of style of artwork sort of thing, but a bit more.
They've gussied it up for the new generation
sort of thing, yeah. So it's that sort of style of view and artwork sort of thing. And you play as a girl called Robin, who is basically meant to be Little Red Riding Hood sort of thing. She looks like Little Red Riding Hood. She's got the Red Riding Hood, if that's what it's called.
That's for riding. For riding in, Chris.
But she's basically an alcoholic mercenary. But she's very cheerful.
Right.
She's quite fine with her alcoholism, but she's got a memory problem.
Okay.
She can't remember any of her past. You know that old chestnut.
I've had that.
That's Sunday morning.
Oh, right, that's right. I can apply that experience to a wider stretch of my life.
If you think about what Sunday morning's like, but forever,
right,
then that's basically her life. So,
what are we talking about?
No, we're not talking about roguelike. We're talking about Dragonfin Soup.
Okay.
So yeah, you're playing as this girl. To be honest, I don't really bother about the story. There's some sort of story going on there. I'm not really bothered about it. You start off in this little town. There's a guy who works in the bar who gives you quests. There's other people in the town that might give you some quests, and then you go out and you go to, like, you get this world map thing where you just click on where you want to go, and then you travel across to it, and you might get a random encounter on the way, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But then you get to where you're going, wherever your quest is. You just go and do your quest, and the quests are pretty generic. They're like kill X amount of guys of this type or something, or find this stuff, or go fucking fishing, like that RPG. Why did they do this? Why did they add fishing into every single one of these things?
It's a good question, that, actually. It's in so many computer games, and you couldn't believe that anybody that made it has ever gone fishing before.
I know.
They've kind of looked at fishing and gone,
and that's
the kind of thing that people do.
Yeah.
If we want to expand or give it, a feeling of realness, why don't we put a fishing into this game? And people will immerse themselves in it.
But yeah, it's kind of weird because there's always fishing is always a mini game as well. It's never just click on the water and there's a fish. It's always just like, oh, here's a little bar, click that, here's a little thing, reel that in. It's
you've got to play it.
You've got to actually play the fishing, and the fishing in this game, I've just ignored it because it's just been like, it tells you have to go and catch these types of fish. You can only catch them in certain places. It doesn't tell you where. I'm just like, I'm not spending hours just running about looking for little puddles to go and throw a line into, and it's the other thing is that you only catch certain fish depending on how you play the mini game as well. But it doesn't tell you what. Like, if I want to catch a trout or something like that, it doesn't tell me where I've got to, how deep I've got to put the line or anything like that. It's like you've got to do this.
You just be fishing for ages.
You've just got to guess.
Well, you just know what you've got to do is become a good fisherman, the kind of guy that knows the stream and where the brown trout are.
Well, again, that's Sunday morning.
Sorry, it's very rarely still brown.
Anyway, right, move on for that. Anyway, back to the actual game itself. The game itself is actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
It's a turn-based thing, like original Rogue games are.
Right.
So basically, if you move a space, everything else in the screen moves a space.
Right.
Or if you attack something, everything else gets to do something. So it's like you move, they move.
Yeah.
Basically. So it's classic Rogue style thing. It's got a lot of RPG things going on. You've got a lot of stats in it. There's a lot of things going on, like strength and attack damage and all this sort of thing. And there's probably 20 of them that I can't even remember just thinking them off the top of my head.
Right.
And there's that sort of classic Rogue thing of you're just running about and people might drop weapons and you might find things in a box or something like that, and it might be a weapon or armour or something, or potions or bombs, or you've got a gun in this game as well, so you can fire your shotgun. You might find shotgun cartridges of different types. And that's
that also kind of randomised, the stuff you find there?
Yeah, it's all very randomised. Yeah. And that's sort of like one of the things that people really get into roguelikes for is that loot thing, that looting frenzy that you get.
I have seen the looting frenzy. I've seen it. I've seen many people take a looting frenzy.
So you're just running about, just being like, "Oh, could be something good in here."
Aye.
Oh, it's just another crap potion. Although she doesn't drink potions in this game, it's actually alcohol. But that's just to add a bit of flavour to the character.
Why not? Yeah. It gets her better.
One of the other things about this game is that it has a crafting system, which I'm actually quite enjoying. But again,
crafting system.
Yeah, so you can actually make weapons, you can make armour, you can make all sorts of things in this, but you have to find the recipes for it. You can just randomly put stuff into the crafting thing and see if it makes something, and then if you manage to make something, you get the recipe for it.
Yeah.
But there's so much stuff in this game. There is so much just little things you can pick up. You can even pick up animal droppings, and that's a crafting thing. Any item that can be used to craft has got a little anvil symbol on it. And pretty much everything I've picked up so far has had a little anvil symbol on it, from wool to dye, just bits of grass and all that sort of just lots of random stuff that you can just pick up.
Yeah.
Because you can actually attack the terrain in this game. So grass and trees and rocks and all that kind of thing, and you do actually spend
Zelda.
Most of the game attacking terrain in this, because you can't get past terrain unless it's.
You've got to hack your way through.
So you do spend most 80% of this game you're just attacking trees,
just so you can get from one place to another. That's
and
great.
one of the weird things is that when you do attack this terrain, it falls over. But it only ever falls over left or right. If you're on the right side of it, it falls to the left. You're on the left side, it falls to the right. If you're below or above it, it falls to one side or the other. But it never falls up or down. It's bizarre. Which is... Because you can actually, like, if you drop a tree on top of somebody, it'll hurt them. But if they're below you, then that's useless.
That's weird.
So, it's very weird. I don't know why
Maybe
they've done
something
that.
to do with the air currents in this
It could
this
well
world.
be in this weird world they've set up. But yeah, I mean, that is really the game as such. I mean, it's like most roguelikes. It's you play it because you want to loot and level up.
Right.
Like, basically, that's it. That's what roguelikes are.
Yeah.
And I think, like, the game got a bit it got a bit of stick when it came out. Not just because they released the whole thing as one package. They didn't give any of the Kickstarter backers any sort of beta access.
We have discussed this.
Yeah, we have discussed this. They didn't do any of that. They just released the whole thing at once on Steam, on PlayStation 4, and whatever other platforms it came out on. I can't actually remember at the moment. The game got a bit of criticism because, like, I think people were expecting it to be more RPG.
Right.
And when it came out, it was like a sort of proper old school roguelike style with the whole turn-based thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think people were really expecting that, especially the way it was sort of done through Kickstarter. It seemed like, you know, there was a lot of sort of wallpaper and stuff released that Kickstarter backers could get for the computer, and it was all like really gorgeous artwork. And all that sort of
I saw a lot of that stuff, and I remember, like, when it was... I actually remember a lot of the hype for this game, being slightly cynical about the main character, and she's a little girl, but she's also an alcoholic.
Yeah, I know. Look at the strong female protagonist. She's just like us, isn't she? Just.
It's always good the way to, like, denote strength in a woman is to make her an alcoholic.
Exactly. I don't know what they were actually like. See, I'm not really sure if her alcoholism is actually like some part of some bigger story here.
Oh, right,
but
right.
it just seems. Like
I just assumed they were playing it for laughs.
Let's
like,
give
when
her
I
some
first heard
personality
about it.
traits. Alcoholic. There we go.
Alcoholic is not an emotion.
Alcoholic, cheerful, done.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, they can do what they want, Chris, really. But I mean, when you were sort of describing it as being a sort of basic 8-bit looking thing,
No, 16-bit.
nah, well, I don't know the bits. I don't know my bits. The what do we call it? Yeah, it struck me as a bit odd because from what I'd seen of the game and a lot of the promo stuff for it, I'd probably made the same assumption as a lot of these fans that it was going to be this kind of like RPG with a weird dark fantasy element to it. But it's not.
It's not. No, it's basically just a roguelike game. And if you like roguelike games and you quite like this sort of 16-bit, slightly comic-y artwork, then you'd probably enjoy this. Yeah. And there's a lot of, like I say, there's a lot of craft and stuff. If you like a looting frenzy and you like to just pick up lots of stuff and see how it all mixes together and stuff, then definitely like you're going to enjoy this game.
I find the looting frenzy fascinating. I don't know if I'm prone to it myself. I think I actually have to play a game a bit before looting frenzy is something that I'll even consider.
Yeah. And you get like sort of crafting quests in this as well. So there's a blacksmith that you eventually stumble upon, or he's like a joiner or a blacksmith carpenter.
Right.
Like one of these all-encompassing things.
Yeah.
He's just a crafting guy, and he gives you like quests that are involving, just make this for me. You need this stuff to do it.
Right.
So that's almost like giving you a recipe, but you've also got to do this quest for him. And like I say, it's an interesting game. It's not what I was really expecting when it first came out. It was full of bugs, and I tried to play it, and I played like an hour of it and had to turn off.
And this was like the proper release.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if I would call them bugs. I just think that they made some choices that were not like good for the gameplay. There was a lot of like the controls were really clunky. They just did not feel natural at all, and they fixed that.
Right.
It's much more natural now, and there was things going on like you couldn't really see where you were sometimes if there was vegetation in front of you, and they fixed that by making the vegetation a bit more.
Vegetarians, Chris.
The vegetarians are a bit more transparent now.
Oh, right.
They tell you what they're thinking now. Yeah. So the vegetation's a bit more transparent, but there is still a bit of an issue there where, like, sometimes, like, when you've got sort of proper walls that are, like, at the edge of the level sort of thing, you still sometimes can't really tell what's going on, what's behind them.
Oh, is that one of those things where it's slightly off, like, not quite top down? You just can't see behind the thing.
You just can't quite see behind it, yeah. So, like, if there's something sitting behind that wall, you're not going to be able to see it.
That's an infuriating thing in some
games. It is a bit annoying, but I can kind of live with that. Still, though, I mean, it's a decent game.
Yeah,
it's a decent game. If you're
just playing this on the PC,
I'm playing it on Steam, yeah. But like I say, it did come out on PS4. I will now look up
other platforms.
The other platforms.
Other platforms are available.
Yes. Just hang on. And it is.
It's
yes.
as if we're being held to any kind of integrity.
Nobody's telling us what to do.
Listen, mate, don't buy an Xbox, that's for wankers.
It's on Windows, it's on OS X, Linux, PS3, PS4, and the PlayStation Vita, actually. And I actually think that for a PlayStation Vita game, this would be pretty good. This is probably a good way to pass the time on a train.
Yeah, actually, I can see that.
You know, on a bus or something like that. I would definitely see myself doing that sort of thing. I don't know how much longer I'm going to play this game, I'll be honest with you.
I suppose if there's not a story holding you to it.
Exactly, yeah. And I think you have to put a bit of investment into this game if you want to get something out of it.
Right.
Especially with the whole crafting thing and stuff like that, because that seems like that's going to take a hell of a long time before you can actually start properly putting stuff together. But we'll see. I did play it for an almost entire 4.5 hour train journey once, so I obviously got something out of it there.
Yeah.
But it's, like I say, it's
4.5 hours worth out of any game you're doing.
It is popcorn for your brain.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, don't go expecting anything too special out of it. But if you just want something
where ideas.
Yeah. If you want something where you can just turn your brain off and not have to think and just go around hacking and slashing things, then yeah, Dragonfin Suit. It's a roguelike game that you'll probably enjoy.
Nice one.
But at the moment, I would probably give it 3.5 out of 6 broken thumbs.
Broken thumbs?
Broken fins.
Not switched off brains?
Yes. 3.5 out of 6 switched off brains.
Right, okay.
So 2.5 of your brains are still switched on.
Ah, right, yeah. Well, they say that only 2.5 of your brains are ever switched on, and the other 6 aren't. You never use them.
The other 6?
That's isn't that the fact?
I think
2.5 of your brains, you only ever use 2.5 of your brains, and the other 10 don't. Like, they don't do anything.
Yeah, you only ever use 2.5 of your brain.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other 15.
Right, and they don't. They just sit there doing nothing.
There,
yeah.
Well.
Okay.
Well, 2.5 of my brains are currently only fired up, so we'll use the other 20 and go to a break. We're going to talk about one board game.
One board game. As you said, we're keeping it light today.
Yeah.
And we're going to go with a classic.
Yeah, we'll go with a classic. One of my all-time favourite board games, and it's a bit of a surprising one, I think. And it's been one of those games I rated 10 out of 10 on Board Game Geek. The first one I rated 10 out of 10 on Board Game Geek, sorry. And at the moment I've only got 4 or 5 that I've got a 10 rating, and that one's still up there.
Right.
So, but first of all, we're going to have a break.
Yes.
And then we are going to return with Pawel's segment.
Oh, right.
Which he will be finishing off for us, because we had to make it a 2-parter.
Ah, of course.
Yes. So yeah, we'll come back, we'll give you a bit of an intro to Pawel's segment, and then we will continue with board games. Okay, we're back, and we are now going to listen to Pawel, rambling on again.
Everybody listen to Mr. Pawel.
He's continuing his segment about Shadows of Esteren, an RPG. Now, as I said in the last episode, we had to edit this in such a way that this second part is just going to kind of start. There's not going to be an introduction from Pawel or anything, but he's going to start talking about the monsters that are in the RPG.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's just going to start speaking. So don't get a fright. He is very Polish. Very Polish.
But there's nothing to be afraid of.
No, nothing to be afraid of there.
Just listen to him speak. Try and keep up. Try and keep up with it.
Try and keep up, chaps. Okay, so
Let's let him take it away then.
Yep, here's Pawel.
Fantasy is always full of monsters. In Shadows of Esteren, those monsters are not your regular orcs or goblins, as much as I like the funny side of greenskins in Warhammer, or just about, any regular sort of henchman, let's do evil because we're hungry sort of monster that is so prevalent in RPGs. This game is not about heroics as such, even though you can, technically speaking, play a well-armed, battle-worthy knight. You won't be taking part in huge battles because it all comes down to genre. This is not heroic fantasy. This is not high fantasy. There is probably quite a number of different labels that you could either give it or pretty much just point out that it's not it. And that's why I've mentioned that the game has roots in Lovecraft or in The Name of the Rose. This is not about fighting monsters. This is about surviving the unknown. Thank you. Yes, it's about sort of learning mysteries or pretty much just traversing mysteries without actually learning everything about them, but just managing to survive things like this. You're not a superpowered hero that can just smite darkness. You're instead much closer to your regular Lovecraftian investigator, even though you're wearing your leather sort of outfit and going through snowy mountains or some sort of bog. So the monsters here are called Theondas, and I'm pretty sure that this is the actual pronunciation. And what's good about them, in my opinion, is you can actually make them what you want. There's certain characteristics that are described in the game. You have a basic understanding of what they are. The unpredictable, obviously mysterious people or peoples of different kinds that all seem to be following a basic principle of staying away from humans as such, unless for whatever reason, and there's no visible pattern, or at least not many of them that humans can see, Theondas decide to actually, gang up and, destroy a village or slaughter a community and then just go away. A monster is always far more scary and far more interesting if you don't fully understand it. And Theondas is pretty much your Cthulhu mythos as such, without too many scrolls and secrets books about magic and dark arts that you can go through to actually learn what Theondas are. So you know what Cthulhu is and what other monsters and the mythos are. Theondas, sometimes you might be able to actually get a glimpse or have a feeling that you might know what they are, and they'll just surprise you anyway, and you very rarely see them unless it's too late. So yeah, that's not a game about charging at the enemy, which I quite like. Magic, which is also a staple of fantasy games, in my opinion, again, very well done in Shadows of Esteren. For a storytelling system, I would say that this is actually a very solid mechanic that gives you a lot of flexibility and still makes sense, which is so rare for magic systems in RPGs. You don't just get a list of silly, combat spells that would have been taught to no one. Yeah, I can barely understand, various colleges of magic and Warhammer educating their apprentices how to burn villages down and various other destructive spells as such. magic should be much more multi-dimensional, yeah? And I feel that that's what they've managed to do in Shadows of Esteren, where magic is much more similar to shamanistic practices than anything else, and its main theme is with runestones and traditions you can find in cultures such as, again, Celts or Vikings, or you name it. One interesting thing about attributes and mechanics related to character builds in Shadows of Esteren is obviously that being a storytelling system, there's going to be less focus on it, and storytelling RPGs tend to be just I'll call it more simplistic when it comes to that, because nobody wants to spend too much time rolling dice or studying character sheets if they just want to narrate another scene, or and Shadows of Esteren, they've actually not even sort of codified your standardized, I would say, attributes such as your strength, your whatever stamina, agility, and things like this. What they've done, and I'm actually not sure if it works too well yet. I've not been able to put it into practice much. Sometimes I tend to roleplay without character sheets at all, and in case of Shadows of Esteren, I've studied the system, read all the books, but haven't actually played it yet. Or game mastered. But back to the character sheet as such and mechanics, the backbone of your character sheet doesn't rely on your standard average attributes. So whatever traits you think a human body has, whether it's, as I said, intelligence, reflexes, your endurance and such. They've based it all on different sort of tempers or personality types and subtypes, and what different sort of I would say psychological dynamics you have, and how they regulate how you go through life, and what you get more interested in, and how these different ways you feel about certain things, how they affect various I suppose tasks and feats that you'll have to complete during the game. So it's not just how strong you are or how fast you are, but also what does your character gets most sort of fixated on, or what's their biggest passion and things like this. So it's a bit strange, but I think it fits the mood of the game, where it's not your sort of your strength that will help you survive in the mountains and in this very harsh world, but rather the strength of your spirit and your convictions as such. Right, I should then probably just press stop. I'll talk to you soon, peoples, and we'll have plenty of storytelling systems to talk about, but fear not, there's going to be other types of RPGs as well. Thank you very much.
Well, that was Pawel there talking about Shadows of Esteren.
Part 2 of a bona fide radio serial going on here, I think.
Well, hopefully he'll continue contributing his RPG segment, because it's something that, again, we don't do much of.
No.
If at all these days.
If at all, yeah. No, it's we've pathetically mentioned Pathfinder so many times,
yet still haven't
failed to prove that we've ever played it.
I'm working on it, alright? Just like I'm working on everything else.
Like
the Twitter.
Constantly working. Oh, that Twitter, that'll...
I'm working on the Twitter, alright? It's a difficult thing to set up.
Tell me we don't have to go into this Pathfinder scenario and retrieve this Twitter handle for you.
Yeah. That's a good plan.
Maybe that's the way we should do it.
Oh, yeah. The quest for the Twitter handle. Okay, so we're going to move on. Let's go and talk about a board game.
A board game.
Okay, so our board game segment.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why I did that so sassily.
That kind of put me off there. I didn't know where to go with that.
Okay.
Yeah, board games. So, like we say, we're talking about one of my favourite games. And it's a light war game. Surprisingly. It's a light war game. This is how you would class it.
Yeah, because I've played war games and they're not fun.
No, they're not. Because they just drag on forever and then, you end up hating the person you're playing against.
Yeah. Because they've studied, ancient medieval battles.
Yeah, they've memorised Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Exactly.
Because they work as a bloody admin assistant or something. And they think that that's somehow useful.
Supposedly it can be. Book of the Five Rings and all that.
Aye. So this is Commands and Colours Ancients.
Yes.
We have to be specific about the Ancients part because there is a whole family of Commands and Colours games.
Yeah.
Including Memoir 44.
Yes.
And also Battle Lore. And there's Commands and Colours Napoleonics as well, as one of the more recent ones. And there's also Samurai Battles, which is a strange one. It's one we've not played, but it actually comes with two different rule sets, that Samurai Battles. And one of them is the Commands and Colours rule sets, and the other one is another rule set from another war game. And you can play using the components in that box with either rule set.
Interesting.
So it's quite an interesting one. And it's actually one that I've actually fancied picking up, but I think it's a wee bit pricey.
Did the series start with Ancients then? Because I'm certainly never aware of...
Don't know. I don't think it did, actually.
Because it seems to be one of the biggest part of...
I don't think
there's
it is.
so many expansions.
Battle Lore, I think, might have been the first one.
Right.
And that's a sort of fantasy one, which has got all your dwarves and elves and stuff like that in it.
I mean, we've played Memoir 44 a fair bit, but that could probably take up its own episode.
I think Memoir 44, if my memory serves me correctly, is the highest rated one in Board Game Geek of the Commands and Colours family. Really? I don't think Ancients is as high as Memoir 44. Memoir 44 is a good game.
Oh yeah, no,
there's no denying.
I liked it. Yeah.
And that's the one set in World War II.
Yes.
And yeah, we've enjoyed it while we played through it.
We played through a fair bit of the scenario, and it was. I think we were keeping score at one point.
Yeah, we were. I think I was the Germans and you were the Allies, possibly.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
But I can't remember how we were getting on that. I think I took quite an early lead, and then you.
We went. It wasn't one of these things as usual where you're trouncing me at it. We were fairly close. I think you were probably edging ahead, but it wasn't like it wasn't a humping.
Right, so specifically we're going to talk about Commands and Colours, and it's by GMT Games.
Yes.
It's designed by Richard Borg, which is a good name if you're going to be a war games designer.
Why not?
Borg.
Hope he's done a Star Trek version.
Now, it's, like I say, a light war game, and it plays really quickly, doesn't it? You can play a scenario, and depending on how you get on, some of the quicker scenarios you can play in 15-20 minutes.
Yeah. Which can be a bit frustrating when you've spent about that much time setting them up.
Yes. Now, the game actually comes with little cubes, or different shaped sort of bits of wood, basically. So little squares and bigger squares and rectangles.
Yes.
And it just comes with sheets of stickers, and you have to sticker all these things up yourself, and it can take quite a long time. Just to sticker them up. It did, but I did all that myself. Now, I have all the expansions for this game. We haven't played the last couple of them. I haven't actually touched it since I got the last couple of them. Right. It's been a while since we really broke this game out.
Yeah, I'll be up for trying these expansions.
Yeah. Now, it comes with all these little stickers, and I think in the base game you've got two different colours of wood, basically.
Yeah.
Which you get the expansions, you get more colours so that you can have fights with different armies and stuff from different eras. So it's all set in the ancient era, hundreds of years BC up to it breaks into the AD period for some of the later Roman battles.
Well, you do Rome against like the sort of European, like the barbarians and things like that.
That's right, aye. And you get Roman Britannia and stuff like that. You get like the whole Boadicea thing, I think, turns up at one point. But it's just basically like in the base game, you get your two different sort of armies and a scenario booklet, and the scenarios I think in the base game it's mainly roam against various different people. And the Carthaginians...
So much roam against everyone. Yes, it's Carthage in the
Carthaginians is the
first one,
favourite,
yeah.
I think. But there are a couple of other things, I think.
Well, they're the best battles, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, the Carthaginian thing was, that's whole Hannibal and his elephants sort
It's
of
all
thing.
the elephants.
The elephants in this game, ridiculous. So the game works by you've got different types of units. So you've got all your stickers that you put on your blocks, and these represent your different types of units. So you've got like light infantry, and you've got medium infantry and heavy infantry, but you've also got light and medium and heavy cavalry. You've got archers, you've got slings, you've got elephants, and I don't know if this is in the base game, but definitely the expansions adding things like chariots.
There's chariots in some of the...
I think there might be in a couple of the base games.
I've definitely played ones with chariots in. I mean, the beauty of it is that everything, all the units, apart from the leaders, which we'll maybe talk about separately, all the units fit into this kind of light, medium, heavy class thing.
And they've got different symbols depending on... So, like, if it's a light unit, it's got a green circle.
It's a green triangle, is it?
It's a green circle.
It's a green circle.
And it's a blue triangle for mediums and a red square for the heavies. And those correspond with the symbols on the dice that you use. Mm-hmm. So the dice have got 6-sided dice, and you've got one side's a green triangle, green circle. You're confusing me now. You've got a blue triangle, a red square. Yes. You've also got a cross sword symbol, you've got a flag symbol, and you've got a leader symbol, which is just a helmet, I think.
Yeah. But a purple background.
And when you're fighting, if you're attacking a light unit, you want to roll green circles, because that is their symbol. Yeah. But depending on the unit you're attacking with, so like I think medium and heavy infantry, if you roll cross sword symbols, those count as hits. If you've got a leader attached to the unit, if you roll leader symbols, those count as hits. Yeah. And if you roll flags, it can cause the unit that you're fighting to retreat.
Well, you get a sort of a guide with each game. I think most of the expansions have it because there's certain different units and things like that. It basically explains, and they do a really good job of having a varied selection of units. Yeah. And working their abilities into the dice system, which just covers everything.
It does, and that's the commands and colours.
Well, you've
got your we've explained the colours.
Well, that's the colours. Now let's move on to the commands.
The commands. Now that's the more interesting part. So you've got a hand of cards.
Yes.
And these cards have got different things written on them. Like you can move 2 units on the left side of the map, or you can move all your light units, or you can move all your heavy units, or you can move your cavalry, and then you get things like Darken the Skies, which means that all your archer units can fire twice or something like that, and you get all these other things like leadership cards, which let you move like a leader unit and everything, or 4 or 5 units surrounding them, that kind of thing. And I mean, we should explain the map. The map you actually play on, it's just a bunch of hexagons.
Sure, classic hexes.
7 or 8 high, and maybe about 10 or 12 across, something like that.
That's a pretty good guesstimate. I couldn't tell you. I would have thought it'd be more than that, but then I'm getting confused because there is an expansion map that has
which makes it
larger,
huge, and we'll go into that towards the end, I think. And you get terrain tiles as well that come with this. These are just little hexagon tiles that fit onto the spaces on the board, and they can have like rivers or trees or all those sort of things. So you can use the terrain to your benefit or whatever. So you can stand on top of a hill, which gives you a bonus against anyone that you're fighting against downhill. That kind of thing. Yeah. So back to the command cards. When you play your card, say if it says you move 2 units on your left or something, the board is split into 3 sections. So you've got your left, centre, and your right. And if you can move 2 units on the left, and it can be any 2. And you can move them depending on their stats. And like you say, you've got these cards that explain... It's just an A4 sheet, isn't it? That explain all the different units and how much they move. So light units can move quicker than heavy, medium units.
How many dice they roll when they attack.
Yeah, it tells you how many dice they roll when they attack. It tells you whether if you roll sword symbols, if they count. Some units can ignore retreats. Yeah. So you can ignore the first retreat that's rolled against you. That kind of thing. It's and that this is like you say, the units are all quite varied despite it seeming like it's quite a limited system. Yeah. And it can set up some pretty interesting tactical choices.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you'll have a whole army laid out, and I mean, a lot of it is down to the choices of which parts of the army you use. I mean, there might be certain units that you'll never move.
Yeah, exactly.
The entire game,
and that might not be your fault.
Yeah,
it might be just because you've not got the cards. I mean, this is one of the criticisms of the game, I suppose, is that the cards kind of limit what you can do. So if you've got a hand of cards, which is just like you can only move units on your left for quite a lot of the time.
That's a strange criticism, because I would find that something like the card system, the commands, I've never had a problem with. It's a lot of the time you get the commands, you didn't get the colours. So
that's it.
Rolling. And that's the random element that gets.
This is your favourite phrase.
I think it is. It is my bit of worldly wisdom
regarding
this game. Is you can get the commands, but if you didn't get the colours, what are you going to
What are you going to do?
You're not making anything with that.
But I mean, it's supposed to simulate the fog of war.
Yeah.
This whole thing. So it's supposed to be like ancient battles were like.
Almost impossible to command.
It was really difficult to communicate with your troops.
Yeah.
I mean, from my knowledge of ancient history, they used to use runners, so they would have people that would actually go out and tell these people what to do, or these different units that were on the battlefield. And sometimes things can get mixed up, and it happens. And I think the game kind of simulates that pretty well. And it does. It also simulates ancient warfare, because the way that you're told to set up your units in a particular way at the start of the game, and it's always set up in a sort of classical army style, generally, depending on the scenario you're playing. Because sometimes when you're playing against, the Germanic tribes or something, sometimes they're just scattered about the place and they're insane.
Yeah,
like
they're the guys that will like run for a bit and can attack and all that.
Like the warrior units, like as long as they're at full strength, they get extra dice, and they can be devastating because they're fast. Yeah, but as soon as they lose one of their blocks, they go down a bit, like they lose a bit of their strength and stuff like that. And I mean, like I say, it's quite good at just simulating ancient warfare. Well, you'll have your sort of light units at the front, which is kind of classic sort of ancient warfare sort of thing, and those are your skirmishers sort of thing. So you send them
units
out
at the side and things like that for doing like flanking.
That's it. The cavalry does tend to start on the flanks. It is that kind of thing, and like. You do seem to spend the sort of first few turns of the game just moving the white units you've got at the front of your army, pushing them out, maybe throwing some javelins at each other for a while, and then pulling back again the whole time, looking for that moment when you can move your medium and heavy infantry and the slow moving parts of your army, which are harder hitting, moving them slowly forward. And you have to start making these sort of like sacrifice decisions sort of thing. It's like, right, okay, as soon as I move this medium infantry unit within range of these archers or the light infantry who have also got ranged weapons, like they're going to get hit. Yeah. Like,
what are you going to sacrifice?
Yeah. So what are you going to do here? How are you going to like try and deal with that sort of thing? And there, like some of the other tactical things, like you can do things if a unit has to retreat. So if you roll retreat symbols against a unit and it can't retreat because there's stuff behind it, because it has to move backwards, you can they end up just dying basically. And I was doing a couple of annoying things to you, I remember, where I was basically getting my really fast but really rubbish cavalry, the white cavalry, and running them round the back of your units, and then charging them from the front sort of thing, so that they had nowhere to run. And it was stuff like that was just like these moments in these games when something like that pulls off, when you manage to do that it's quite interesting. It's like you've just been pincered by light cavalry.
I mean, I suppose the basic thing you're always trying to go for is to hold your line and move your force forward in some kind of coherent manner, because you try taking one side of your army up the way to try and you are fucked basically.
You're ruined.
That's the thing you learn quite quickly in that, is you need to try and act as a unit, a whole army.
The whole army has to move together pretty much.
And it's quite difficult to do that. And that's
especially
if
somebody breaks, if your opponent manages to break some sort of link in your army. Because some of the more useful cards are things like the Wine Command card, which lets you move a whole bunch of infantry as long as they're all connected to each other, as long as they're basically all next to each other. And if somebody manages to break a link in your army somewhere, like if your opponent manages to do that, then that Wine Command card becomes much less useful.
You're questioning yourself whether to use it near the start to get to move up, or to like try and get yourself in a position where you can use it to devastate an effect. And which is very difficult.
Any other sort of interesting tactical things that you've used? I do remember you loving the warriors.
I tried to make it... Well, because they are... they have basically one main use, and it's to just fire them into the enemy army as quickly as you can and just do as much damage with them as you can.
Before they get any losses.
Yeah.
Because they are basically suicide bombers, these guys.
You don't really... I was thinking you generally... And a lot of the scenarios are set up... They're not set up as part of your main force anyway. They tend to be sort of dotted around.
Yeah.
If they are in your main force, then you've really got a bit of strength behind you.
Yeah, you have.
And I'm trying to remember some of the... Because you've got your... The way the command cards are broken up, you've got the kind of, like you say, certain field movement ones, or like types of infantry movement ones. You got your line command, and there were a few like special cards. I'm trying to remember what exactly they were, because you had there was I Am Spartacus was the one.
I Am Spartacus was
I remember
amazing.
Like that was being, and you, like you say, the Dark in the Skies, getting all your archers to fire, or was it they could, or there's move fire move. That's one. So any ranged ones could. So you could move them into range of the enemy, lob a load of stuff at them, and then run
instantly
away.
Get them out of danger. They had I Am Spartacus, but there was also another one.
But what did I'm trying to remember what I Am Spartacus actually did. Did not just give you an extra dice?
I think it did, aye. You also got cavalry charge cards as well, which gave your cavalry extra dice and stuff as long as they went straight into combat. And there's something else as well, which was basically... You got 2 extra dice as long as you didn't move or something. So anybody that was already engaged in battle basically could get 2 extra dice.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember what the name of that card is, but that's a devastating card as well. Yeah. That's like you're sitting waiting for the moment to use that. It's like everybody's in a fight. Let's go for it. We should probably talk about the elephants as well as a unit.
We did. Well, we mentioned the elephants before.
The elephants do something ridiculous.
Well, their presence is often felt in the battlefield.
Yeah, well, the presence on the battlefield, even if they're on your side, something's just totally unsure about them. Like they're almost like the warriors. You want to get them in there as quickly as possible because you want to get them away from your own lines.
Yeah.
Because if elephants are ever forced to retreat, they do an elephant stampede. Which basically means that any unit that's next to them, adjacent to them, has to roll for hits. Yeah. Because the elephants just turn and run straight through everything. And they just
trample through everything.
It's pretty insane. So,
and I mean, that can be quite good if you like get them into the other into the enemy's lines, and they take a retreat there, because they have to attack them.
Yeah, you've got no choice. You have to bring those elephants down.
Yeah. So they're going to take a load of damage getting those elephants. I mean, that's why you only have, I think, is it 2 or 3...
It's only 2 blocks for an elephant
blocks,
unit.
Yeah. So most of your infantry blocks are...
They're 4.
Units, there's 4 blocks, so, once they've taken 4 hits, that's them down.
Dead, yeah.
Again, the elephants...
The elephants are 2. So. The cavalry's generally 3.
Yeah.
Chariots are usually 2. But that's really just a measure of their hit points, to be honest. Like warriors, as soon as they lose a unit, they lose a die in combat as well. Yeah. There's one of the interesting things is like the scenarios in the game. They actually give you they're based on real things that happen, real combat battles that happened in history.
Just a bit of background to all.
So you've got your sort of classic Punic Wars with the Romans and the Carthaginians and stuff like that, and it actually gives you a bit of history in each scenario. It tells you what happened in that battle in real life. And some of that's quite interesting. And I ended up learning quite a bit about the Carthaginians and stuff like that just from reading that stuff and the sort of military tactics that they used. And it was possible to actually simulate that in the game. If you could pretty much do what they did and win the battle, sort of thing. If you had the perfect setup for it, if you had the cards to do it and stuff like that.
Well, even I think with the initial setup and the terrain and everything like that, is it based on the kind of the historical records of the of the battles and everything. So
it's because there's one battle, it's Rome versus Carthage, and it was one where Hannibal basically completely slaughtered an army that thought it was going to win. Basically, this Roman army. I can't remember the name of the battle, but it was one where the Romans had basically found themselves with their backs to a river, and the Carthaginians pushed them back into it, sort of thing, and then basically slaughtered them there. And they encircled the rest of the army. They did a classic manoeuvre of making the Romans think that they were running away, just to come back again and encircle them. And you can actually do stuff like that in this, because when you fight that battle in Commands and Colours, you've got the river sitting at the back of the Roman army, and you can try and just push forward and push them back into the river, sort of thing. And if they go into the river, they're screwed. Like, so it's quite interesting. You can just like it does actually simulate in a way these real life things, real life battles that happened. But moving on for that, there is an epic variant of this game.
Yes.
And if you get the expansions, you will get basically an extra board to play the epic variant on. So you flip the boards over, and the boards are basically it's basically you play on a double-sized board. I think it is. Is it double-sized?
It's not triple-sized because you've got your areas are broken into
left, right, and centre.
Well, you've still got left, right, and centre, but the idea is that you'd have somebody commanding each side.
So the idea with the epic thing is that you can play it multiplayer basically. So you can get up to 4 people on each side, so up to 8 people playing the game. We played it with 6, I think. We did it once drunkenly at your house.
6 of us. I've never played it with 8.
And the idea behind that is that each person, so if there's 3 people on each side, one person commands the left, one person commands the right, and one person commands the centre, and you obviously play it with a much bigger army. And the person that's commanding the centre is the actual overall army general, and he is in command of the cards, and what he can do is he can give cards to his like lieutenants or whoever you want to call them, and say like, that's the card you have to use this turn. But the other thing is that there's a sort of, you're not really allowed to tell them about tactics, so but you can in between games, in between turns, depending on what cards you've played, you can take one person out of the room and talk to them,
right? And
that's sort of simulating that again, battlefield, fog and war,
and having to go
you can't actually communicate directly with people unless you send out a messenger to them.
I genuinely think the epic one is the kind of the truest sort of realisation of that.
You think so?
I do. I mean, as much as I like it in any form, I do really like the epic one.
The epic one is really
it's
good.
a lot of fun,
and
it's just a good one to play with other folk and kind of.
But it is epic. It does take a lot longer. Whereas you can play a game of original Commands and Colours in 15-20 minutes, base Commands and Colours. The epic version, it can take more than an hour to play one battle. But it's a good investment, I think, and you do feel like it's pretty tense, like sitting in that room. You've got these 3 generals facing you, and you've got your two pals.
When you're sort of in command of the whole thing, and you're really having to think about like, well, can I get this person to do this? Or can I trust them to do this? Right?
If I give them this card, will they know what it is I'm trying to get them to do?
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, they might not move the units that you were expecting to do. They'll move it in the area that you were expecting, but
and again, simulates that real life sort of ancient combat, because that probably happened. Yeah. You know, somebody in command of one flank of the army just all of a sudden cocks the whole thing up. Which did happen when we played it.
Aye. That's the thing, and I guess better, you know, if you and your buddies playing it have a better idea of how each other think, or have some understanding of the sort of strategy involved in the game, then you're going to be, you know, you're going to understand what the other person wants better. So it's just like good set of military commanders together, you know, it's all
about teamwork.
A tight ship.
That's it.
Yeah.
A tight ship on land.
Ah, exactly. They run a tight ship aground.
That pretty much sums up how it happened to
us. That's how we did it anyway.
Right.
We run a tight ship, creak.
Do you think that covers the Commands and Colours?
I think we've pretty extensively covered the command. I mean, we've gone into some quite like minute detail with some of it there, I think, and talked about specific battles that we've had.
Well, like I say, it's a weird one for it to be one of my favourite games, because, like we say, not really a massive fan of war games, but that's mainly because I can't put that investment into it, sort of thing. Especially when it comes to things like Games Workshop stuff.
I think that's what you're getting.
That's a financial investment that I cannot be bothered with, all right, and a time investment and all that sort of thing.
Well, but as well, there's also a beauty in the simplicity of Commands and Colours.
Yes, and
the range of tactical, the ways you can do it, and the challenge that it provides is so much more satisfying than something where there's, you know, just so many things you can do and not really anything holding you, like restricting you.
That's it.
I mean, that's the thing. It's got a board game heart really to it.
I think so. I think it's the limitations in this game that make it so good, sort of thing. Because You're pretty much always on some sort of level playing field. It's not just a case of who spent the most money getting the models with the best guns. It's...
Yeah, it's purely about your tactical
choices.
Thinking, and it's like, you will
sometimes
see
you
that
get
with
screwed
people.
over by the cards, but
for
the most part, it is generally how you play, what cards you've got.
Yeah, it's adapting to, obviously, well, when something does go wrong, what's your next move? How do you adapt your tactic to keep this going and not just give up?
Exactly. So Commands and Colours Ancients. I mean, I'll stick with my 10 out of 10 for this. I'm not going into any funny ratings. I'm serious about this.
Really,
I'm serious about this.
And this is a rating that's on Board Game Geek, so you can't mess with that.
No, I can't mess with
that's
that.
been aggregated against other people's ratings and given to give a meta score.
Yeah, exactly. All the nerds would have a fucking rage fit if I change my rating.
Muck with the numbers, man. Well, I'll back up your 10 out of 10 because I don't. I don't want to anger these nerds.
Yeah, nerds,
nerd. So, yeah, I'll stick with the 10 of the 10. 10 of the 10.
10 of the 10.
And give it an extra wee thumbs up from myself. That's just a secret silent thumbs up that the
right.
nerds can't see.
I can see it.
Right. You're not a nerd, are you?
Well, that's for you to decide.
Right.
I am.
Nerd!
Right. Well, I think that wraps up the show.
Yes.
This has been a lot longer than I thought it was
I
going to be.
thought this was going to be a very short
So did
episode.
I.
I thought we were just going to sit here for half an hour, talk a load of shite, and then just go to our beds.
Instead, we've sat here for nearly an hour and a half talking a load of shite, and now we're going to go to our beds.
Aye, well. An hour can mean so much. And hopefully it means a lot to you listeners.
Right, so like we say, there will be no more episodes this year.
No.
This is the final 2015 episode.
Consider this the end of season 1.
Yes, if you will.
Yeah, if you think about these things like that.
I don't.
It's fine then. You don't have to. You can just think of it as episode 11 coming in January.
Yeah, episode 11 coming soon on a date soon to be.
Yes. An unspecified date. Yes.
Soon to be discussed.
That'll be our actual Christmas episode, I think.
Yeah, January the something.
That will be properly festive when we do it.
I will be.
Aye.
What else is there to say? Euan, what have you got to say for yourself?
I don't know why you're putting me on the spot. Although I think I remember what that quote was about the brains. It's you only use 10% of your actual brain, and the other 50% is being stolen by the government to pay taxes.
Did you see this on Facebook?
I did, yeah. And I did
right.
my own additional research on Infowars. Because you have to do your own research. You've got to get your own numbers there, Chris.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Don't believe the media.
Don't believe the media.
The social media.
Yeah. Wake up, sheeple.
Right. Thanks for listening. You can email any comments, questions, criticisms, abuse, etc.
Yes.
To firstplayertoken@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. That's the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast.
Starting to sound more and more like a pilot as you go.
Yeah, I know. We are now cruising at 30,000 sheeples.
Cabin crew, check doors.
Yeah. But the Twitter feed does exist, but there's nothing on it.
Yeah.
And it's, I believe it's at First Player Token, but
Is it a feed if it's not feeding you anything?
it's an empty feed.
Right, okay.
It's like an empty trough.
Right. Surrounded by dead cows.
Yes.
Right.
We've been playing Agricola again.
Keep trying to feed bricks to these cows.
Yeah, it's at First Player Token, but it's actually one ST player token, not first, because apparently First Player Token was taken by some nerd.
Oh, God, we'll take these nerds down one of these days.
So it's one ST player token, I think is what it is. I'm pretty sure it is. If it's not, then it's not. Where else can you find us? On SoundCloud.
SoundCloud, yes.
The Large and Unnecessary.
Yeah.
I think is just what it's called.
That's just the large and unnecessary. I mean, if you search with the obvious terms, you'll find it.
Yeah.
I did that because I couldn't be bothered following the link from the Facebook page.
That's pretty good for you with your 2.5 brains.
Ah, yeah.
10% of 2.5 brains.
10% of 2.5 brains is how many percent, Chris?
10%.
Right, good.
You can also find us on iTunes. We are an official iTunes thing.
They are, yes.
We exist on the iTunes podcast thing. So find us there.
I had a look for ratings. There weren't any yet, but there was. But I think it was episode 8 or episode 9 had a very high download rate. Much higher. There was like a little bar that was a lot higher, a lot more filled than any of the other bars next to the other episodes. So I don't know what
that's
that means.
interesting.
That could be good.
What do we talk about in that episode?
Nothing good, I don't think.
Never is.
Yeah.
Right, well, thanks for listening to this.
Yeah. Thanks for
mediocre
joining us on our
podcast.
first year of foray into the podcast world.
Yes,
Come and join us.
have a happy generic festive season.
Yes.
Whatever it is you're celebrating.
Happy holidays, folks.
And have a good new year, or Hogmanay as we call it.
Hugmanay. Hugmanay.
Yeah, we'll see you next year.
Bye.
See ya.